Welcome to this week's episode of the Founder and the Force Multiplier podcast, where we explore how founders and leaders work together with their right-hand partners to turn ideas into action and build wildly successful businesses. Today, I'm speaking with Andy Culligan and Miranda Berry. Andy is a salesperson stuck in a marketer's body. He believes the only way to achieve revenue growth is a joined-by-the-hip approach to marketing and sales. His core focus is making sure that marketing goals are 100% aligned to those of the sales organization. At andyculligan.com, he helps fast-growing SaaS tech startups reach commercial success through marketing and sales alignment. With close to a decade experience in SaaS MarTech, Andy has built teams from the ground up, managed both marketing and sales teams to pipeline success. Andy is your CMO resource at a fraction of the cost of a full-time resource. Miranda has 3 years of experience working as a virtual assistant and now works as an executive assistant through Base to Andy Culligan, founder of andyculligan.com, who also happens to be the marketing consultant for Base. She is passionate about providing maximum impact for Andy's business by prioritizing the protection of his time and believes in leading her support for executives through fostering authentic connections rooted in empathy and compassion. I loved talking to Andy and Miranda about their partnership and how they make it work without even ever having met in person yet. #remote work life. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I think you will, then be sure to let us know in all the usual places, such as leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this episode. Welcome, Andy and Miranda, to the podcast. I am very excited to have you both here today.
Thank you. Excited to speak with you.
Thanks for having us, Ali.
This is your
Sorry, I just spoke over you. For the first time out of my mouth, I'm speaking over people. My apologies. But thanks for having us. Yeah.
That's okay. It'll happen again. It's fine. So I really wanted to start with you, Andy, about your career journey. And I met you virtually through your work at Base. So I'm kind of curious what your background is and kind of share with me a little bit of your career journey and then how you got partnered up with Base.
Okay. So, yeah, my career journey is an interesting one. So where do I start? It's always like, do I go all the way back, or do I just give the past couple of years? So I think it's somewhat funny as well, because I don't know how much Miranda knows about all my experience, but I started working when I was 14. So I've always been given somewhat of a strenuous work ethic, I would say is probably the best way to describe Miranda's probably that explains a few things. So yeah, I spent my summers working in doing things like merchandising, but also working in offices and things like that. And then worked in department stores. I was selling, I went from selling gym memberships on the street for commission to selling cutlery and silverware to presidents and things like that. And then there's all my uni jobs. And I worked in the States for a summer. I worked at a carnival. So I lived in Myrtle Beach for a summer when I was younger, and I worked at a carnival. So very, very trendy and very, top class. But so I started my real career. I started my career as a seller. But I studied marketing. So I started as a seller. So in an SDR role, which is a junior seller, cold calling, basically picking up the phone to people all day that don't want to talk to you. That's how I started my career, which is a joy. And then I went into more account management. And then I decided that I wanted to earn less money. So I went into marketing. But no, I went into marketing then because it's what I had studied. I also, in the meantime, moved from Dublin, where I grew up, to Vienna in Austria. So I moved to Austria back in 2009. My wife is Austrian, that's why I live here. So I moved here 2009, which is almost 15 years ago, which is crazy. And then I did all types of things. Like I did an SDR job for a little while in German, when I couldn't speak German, which was very interesting. That didn't last very long. And then I got into more marketing, lead generation focused roles. And then I started making my way up through other companies. I started doing things a lot in marketing technology. So I became a MarTech expert almost, back in the days where there weren't many, right? So we're talking about 2010, where there wasn't much marketing technology on the market. And I started running a company with a guy out of Ireland. And we if you guys are familiar with Groupon, if you remember Groupon, we ran an Irish competitor to Groupon, which we built ourselves. So we didn't have any money for an email tool, so we developed one. It wasn't great, but I learned a lot from that. And then I went on to get more into marketing tech. early days of like marketing automation and so on. And I became like very quickly in one company that I was working with, which was a global company. I became very quickly their like global champion for a tool called Marketo. And Marketo is a marketing automation tool and also based on lead gen and so on. And following that, then that was a very slow moving, like slow paced company, which was basically just full of old men. Basically, the entire industry was just full. Like you go to an event and it's like, oh, the same 50, 75-year-olds are here, and they're all white old men. And it was super boring, right? So then I then somebody was looking at my LinkedIn profile one day and I just wrote back. I wrote to him and said, like, why are you looking at my LinkedIn profile? And this is actually funny because it's come back around because this guy is now actually one of my clients now, like 12 years later.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
But so then I went into the tech space. So that was my first like bit in the tech, because he wrote back to me being like, oh, that's cool that you're reaching out to me. I was like, well, you were looking at my LinkedIn profile, so what do you want? And he was like, we have a job. Would you be interested in coming on board and being like a marketing automation expert at this company? And it was this company was a fast-paced tech company. I'd never been in tech before. And I got into tech then, and my like immediately it was just like a complete change of pace. Like my head nearly spun off my shoulders, right? The tech space is wild, right? And from then, like I just went, like it just kept on going up and up from there. Like I worked hard, right? But I made some clever moves. Like I'm of the opinion that like you need to not just everyone says, "Oh, work clever" instead of working hard. You need to do both, right? But there are some things you can do in order to get noticed and to help you progress in your career. And I did a lot of those things. We can get into that later if you're interested. But then I went through. I then started leading a global team, and then following leading a global team, I was poached by a competitor, and then I led a global team at a competitor as a CMO role, and then I went up to another CMO role. And at the same time, like all this stuff was happening in the background. Family, my wife had a kid, we were married at this point, and we were moving house, we were renovating a house. Like, and throughout this, I was building my career at the same time, and it was just a wild time. And I was jumping from like one wild position to the next wild position, crazy growth, like requests coming in, like I'm based in Europe, right? Requests coming in like, I need you to go to a dinner in San Francisco the day after tomorrow, and then I need you to be back the next day in the office to have this meeting, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have to sit in this 14-hour flight. So like these types, and that was normal, right? So, and this went on for years, and then pandemic happened. I was already at another company. I was a CMO there, a small team. We were seeing great results, but it was super exhausting. And I got to a stage where I was very close to burning out if I wasn't careful, because I was trying to control everything, and the team were just, it wasn't possible to manage the team effectively. And that paired with, I didn't like the way that the company was moving, and it was very much on my shoulders to make sure that the revenue was going to go in the right direction, and I didn't agree to the vision. So with that, I just said to the founder, who I had a lot of respect for, by the way, huge amount of respect. I said, hey, look, I'm out. Like, I'm exhausted. If I keep going this way, I'll 100% burnt out. Spoke with a therapist and everything at the time. Wasn't the right thing for me. So I quit, like with nothing. Like for the first time in my life, I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do, but we'll figure it out. Right. And if my wife says that to me, like, you're going to be fine, then like, she's like the most risk averse person ever. Like she will not like, she won't be like do it because I think it's a great idea and like super spontaneous. She's like, no, like weigh up all the odds, see what's going to work. So then I quit, and then immediately people started reaching out to me being like, hey, do you want a full-time position? And I was like, no, thank you, but I'll help. And then what happened was, so the same company Base is funded by a private, or not a private equity company, a venture capitalist company called High Alpha, and they're based out of Indianapolis. The company that I worked with has headquarters in Indianapolis. So I know a lot of people in Indy, right? Indianapolis is a super small place as well, right? It's like, it's more of a town or a village than a city, right? So everybody sort of knows everybody. And one of the other portfolio companies from High Alpha is a company called Casted.io. And it's run by a lady called Lindsay Chepkema. And myself and Lindsay used to work together at Amarsis. She's, in the meantime, a very good friend. And Paige, who's the CEO at Base, she had an issue with their current head of marketing. Somebody stepped down or whatever and quit and went on somewhere else, and they needed a quick fix. And I just said, hey, look, or Lindsay said, I know somebody, maybe he's interested in giving you guys a hand. And that's how the relationship with Base started. And at that point in time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, let's see. And then with that, then very quickly, more and more just started coming in. And I was like, I don't even have a website. What am I going to do? So like, it was very much like, just like, okay, this is a thing now. Now I'm a business owner. Now I've started like my own business, and like, now I have andyculligan.com, which I didn't want to call andyculligan.com, just put it out there. Hate the name, but I was advised to do that because I was like, everybody knows you. They don't know if you're creating a company, whatever.
Yes. Why did you not want to do it?
Because it's an ego trip. I don't want to like, you know,
Yeah.
that's the, but it works. Like, it's fine. Like, it's driving business, so it's fine. But look, that I've gone on a massive monologue there for like 5 minutes. So yeah, it's
that's okay. Now I have a lot to pull from. So because I have a bunch of questions here. Well, one of the common threads that I think is really interesting that I think we'll get into when we talk a little bit with Miranda here as well, is that the importance of the vision, of the alignment of vision between you and, I don't know if it was the CEO or the founder, but of that company before you left, that you were not in alignment with the vision anymore of where it was going. And that's one of the things that I talk to so much when I'm talking to executive assistants or chiefs of staff or force multipliers, that alignment of vision has to be, that we as force multipliers need to be in alignment with the vision of our leaders as well, or it can create a contentious situation, or it's just not as motivating anymore. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think it's so true in so many different roles. And then, so when you started your own business, what do you consider yourself, a fractional CMO? Do you consider yourself a consultant? Like, how do you position the work that you do?
Never mention a C word around me. Miranda will know that. You never call me a consultant.
Consultant. Okay.
The C word's a dirty word in these parts. No.
Noted. Okay.
So I see myself very much as a fractional CMO. I never want to be seen as a consultant, because consultants normally come in, kick over tables and point out things and then run away and say, I'm not going to help you implement, right? That's not what I do. That's against everything that I do, actually. So yeah, fractional CMO, it basically, I've seen that most companies don't actually, or it's not 100% necessary for certain size companies to have a full-time CMO. They need somebody that knows what the right decisions to make are based on experience that they have. Because the thing about marketing is it's just one long test, right? And you're placing a lot of bets all the time and hoping that one of your bets is going to pay off. And I've been relatively lucky that I've been in a number of organizations that have had like a lot of funding, okay? And I've made a massive amount of mistakes within a huge amount of money, which is not something to be very proud of, but as a marketer, it's very helpful, right? So I've got a general idea of what works and what doesn't work. And with that, I'm not afraid to make quick decisions. And that's the thing for me. And I found most companies that have like these small marketing teams, they're just taking orders from the CEO. The CEO doesn't really have any clue about marketing or what way is up when it comes to marketing. They'll typically acknowledge that, but the person that they've hired from a marketing perspective doesn't know themselves what the right thing to do is. And I come in and say, hey, look, do this, do that, do this, and this, and that. And then we see where we go after that. And the CEO's like, thank God somebody's here to actually tell them what to do. That's the...
Right.
That's where I feel.
To help strategize and implement. Yeah. Okay. That's great. What has been your experience so far? How's it felt moving from employee to business owner?
Love it. Like I make all my own decisions, more or less. Like it's become more complex. At the beginning, it was always like, this is very simple. The anxiety is still always there. Like I always have this anxiety of being like, I need to win more business, because if one drops out, then I need to make sure that's being replaced. There's always this like build a pipeline in my head. I'm always trying to like be like innovative in terms of how we're pushing forward, and that's always like a constant monkey on my back. Unfortunately, it's just how I am, right? But and now there's probably a bit more sleepless nights than before, because I now have a team, and there's other people that are I'm reliant on, and also they rely on me, right? So that's something, but I try not to overthink it too much, but that's easier said than done, right? But yeah.
And yet you say all that, but your first response was that you love it.
Yeah, I love it. I know, I absolutely love it. Absolutely. I've said this many times. I'm not going back to full-time employment. If this doesn't work out for whatever reason, it's working out very well right now, but if it doesn't work out, then I'm starting something new. So
you do something. Yeah. That's awesome. So when and why? Like, what was the catalyst for hiring an executive assistant, who I assume your first EA was Miranda,
Hey,
or have you had an EA in the past?
sort of. I shared an EA with other execs, which was a disaster. But first of all, because the EA wasn't particularly very good, and second of all, because it was just it was too much pressure on one person's shoulders, right? To be like
Sure.
organizing everything on behalf of like 5 people, right? So
Yeah,
you know,
it can be complex.
yeah. So when did I make the decision? I made the decision about a year ago, and it was down to a couple of things. Like, my calendar is a mess. Like, sorry, it's not a mess now. My calendar was a mess.
Right, it was.
My
Yeah.
calendar was a mess, right? Like, I'm not great at organization. Like, I'm really good at ideas and pushing people forward and executing and making sure that people are doing the right things. That's where I excel.
Yeah.
Organization is not my strong point. Like, the amount of arguments that happen in the Culligan household because of stuff that hasn't been organized correctly, or like put in the right drawer or whatever, like, is insane, right? So like that's just me. I'm just a bit chaotic when it comes to that. So I got to a point where it's like, people, like, I'm having to turn away business because I'm just not able to, like, I'm spending hours a week, like, trying to manage my calendar, make sure that everything's working out okay, managing my inbox. Like, I'm super bad on email, but I'm amazing on Slack. Like, email is a disaster, car crash of a channel for me. Whereas if you ping me on Slack, I'll get back to you immediately, right? That's just how I am. I guess I have like some form of ADHD or something. I don't know. That's like just making me just, like, I see something in there, like, okay, quick, I need to respond. Done. That's, but email, it's easy for me to ignore. So it got to that point. And again, it was like, myself and my wife actually were talking about it. She said, like, you need an assistant. Like you need to do something here. And again, when she starts giving me like that, like, you need to start spending money on something that's like, for your business, and it's like, it's a somewhat of a risk, but she's like weighed up all the odds. I'm like, okay, well, then it's obviously the right thing to do at this right time, right? So and that's when I decided, okay, like, I mean, I had the relationship with Base already, so Base offer EA support, so it was a no-brainer. Then it was very easy for me to get moving with it, really.
Mm-hmm. And so I believe you work remotely. I'm assuming, Miranda. I don't know where you're located, but I don't know if you've ever met in person before.
No, I'm based out of Florida, and Andy is in Vienna. So we've never met in person. Maybe one day, though.
Yeah. So as a remote EA, like, what does your day-to-day look like, and how have you worked on building a relationship and a partnership with Andy, particularly remotely, which is more of a challenge?
It is a challenge, especially with the time difference. So Andy is 6 hours ahead. So the order in which I do my tasks, I arrange in a way so that I can spend the maximum amount of time to be able to communicate with Andy in real time when needed. So when I begin my day in the morning, it's already afternoon for Andy, but that's when we have our Slack communications. That's when we have our weekly calls during that time. And then certain tasks that I don't need, to be in communication with Andy for, invoicing, doing certain research, coming up with different documents for him, things like that, I can push in the afternoon. So that's kind of how my day is structured. It does afford me a lot of flexibility, though, being remote. So, when things come up with my family, I don't need to leave an office. It's definitely beneficial in that way. And in terms of building a relationship with Andy, it honestly hasn't been too big of a challenge, to be honest. We haven't been able to meet in person, but through our weekly calls, we catch up on not only, what's going on in his business, but little bits and sprinkles of what's going on in his personal life. And just having that open dialogue really does help build that relationship with him. Yeah. So
do you support Andy on the personal side as well as business?
I mean, to a certain extent, his personal calendar is his personal calendar. I don't really do much scheduling and things like that on the personal end, but I think it really helps to know what's going on in his personal life to an extent, just so that I can really protect that time for him. Like if he has family time, there's certain blocks in the evenings that I protect for him because he's a fractional CMO as well. He has people in the US Eastern time as well as all the way in Pacific time that he has to communicate with. So scheduling meetings for him to make sure that doesn't interfere with his family time, and also just it helps you be more connected to somebody when you know what's going on in their personal lives as well and not just business. It's humanizing. So it's not just business. Andy shares that side of his life as well, which really helps. And when you're remote, you really need to build a connection with somebody. So you have that. I think you mentioned earlier, like having that motivation to want to support somebody. It helps when the other person is more human and they're just not a workaholic robot, right? So I think that's where we succeed, is that we see that aspect of our lives and we kind of respect it and we don't block it off, and we don't really try to hide anything like that either.
And do you share just as much of your personal life too with Andy? Is it like,
it's funny. Andy's a much more open person than I am. For the longest time on my Slack, I didn't have a profile picture. And so when I would message people, Andy would joke that I was Miranda bot. But no, he does know about my family. Sometimes I work from home. So if my kids are home, they kind of poke their heads in and Andy chats with them. And so we do. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. Probably not as much. Andy shares a lot. I usually enjoy his stories more probably than I share my own. But yeah, we do.
You mentioned that it kind of was, maybe you built a relationship quickly, or it was easy to build a relationship quickly. I'm just wondering if either of you have any advice on like how do EAs and executives go about finding somebody that they connect with that quickly? Is it that because there was like the proper matching done on the front end, or is it just based on your personalities that you connected so well? Like, how does somebody really find that person that they mesh with?
I think both Andy and I have gone through experiences where we were not matched properly. So I have worked for executives where it was not a match. And I think vice versa, Andy has as well. So it's partly that screening process, right? Where you really kind of, when you interview them, when you speak to them for the first time, you part of it is kind of instinctual, like, if you will be a working match, whether you kind of align on the same values when it comes to your work and your life. Those things are really important. And I think it's really important to listen to that instinct. And then there's that other part where you, as an EA, you do mold yourself and your working style so that it can best support the executive. So there has to be a balance of that. I don't know. What do you think, Andy? Like, what made our relationship work from the get-go? It was pretty seamless, honestly.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, whenever I hire anybody, there needs to be like a chemistry. It's something anyway. Like I can normally tell if it's a definite no from the very beginning. Like from the first moment I chat with somebody, I can say whether or not I'm gonna hire them. Now that's probably, there's some form of bias in that's probably not fair, but I can always say, like, from a chemistry perspective, from how you guys, if you're on the same wavelength or not, right? And that's a feeling that I've had anyway, not just with EAs, but just across the board when hiring. And I've hired at this point, or I've been in a hiring process for hundreds of roles, and I've interviewed probably over 1,000 people actually in the past whatever amount of years, because I've been at fast growing companies that I've grown teams from 5 people up to 100 people, and for that to grow to 100 people in a team or something like that, you need to be interviewing, I don't know, 20 people, and you can very easily just say, this is definitely not going to work from the first moment that you have this, like, from after 5 minutes of small talk, you can tell whether or not it's going to work, right?
I agree completely.
Yeah. So, but with myself and Miranda, like, I think first off, it was it was she was able to get like time to value happen very quickly, right? So it was a noticeable impact for me personally in terms of how I could work, and how her being with the team now actually helped me and freed up a lot of time. Like that happened basically within the first week, right? So I was always like, oh God, this could take forever, and it might be more work for me to hold somebody's hand, to show them everything. But like Miranda was just like, oh, it's fine, I got it. Like, and it was, I knew I could trust her from the start, and that just worked really well. And like it just started working very quickly. So from my side, like that was the most important thing. Like show time to value quickly, and prove to me that it's going to be able, it is going to be something that's not just not an additional time suck for me, and not just a waste of money for me, right? That's also like that's the other thing, right? That it's a business thing at the same time as well. I need to be careful that I'm not wasting money on things that are not making sense. And this, like when I look at what, like the investment that I've made from the business for Miranda to be within the business, it's enabled me to win more and more business. Like, so the amount of investment that I've put in has paid itself off like tenfold based on the work that Miranda does, right?
It's exciting to witness that as well, because I came in towards the beginning of Andy's business, and to see it grow has been really exciting. Like, it's very satisfying to see that effect.
I love that you both mentioned that for different reasons. But I think, Andy, when you were talking about that, I mean, I know we're talking about businesses, like that return on investment. It is so important, but I think you nailed it when you said, too often, I think executives, entrepreneurs think of hiring an executive assistant as this burden and this expense, but really it's this huge investment into the business. And you just gave us some more proof that your business was able to grow by making this one hire. And that's the whole point. Not just the business is going to grow, but you're probably not doing a bunch of stuff that you didn't enjoy doing anyway.
100%.
So now Miranda gets the opportunity.
100%. 100%. Like the 10 hours or 15 hours a week I was doing on scheduled meetings and managing my calendar and doing all that stuff, and making sure it was probably more actually. Like all of that is now solved. Like all travel booked, all my, like all of the bits and pieces around travel that are booking, like little things, that are also nice as well when you show up at the airport. She's like, oh, got you. Like I've made sure that that's looked after, or getting like your parking sorted at the airport, because I arrived at the airport, I was like, oh shoot, I forgot. And then I got the message from Miranda saying, here's your parking. I didn't even tell you to do it, like, but that's a nice little thing. But at the same time though, by those hours that I'm saving that Miranda's now doing, I'm able to close more business. Like so the time that I've saved, I'm able to put towards new business. So the issue with my business is it's very hard to scale it, because you can't scale my time. So how do you scale me? Like, it's not possible, right? So like my time is my money, right? That's like, time is money. Everyone says that, but it really, for my business, it is. And by freeing up those hours during the week that I would spend on a lot of, for example, Miranda does all my taxation, which is great fun for her because she has to do it all through German, which is also great fun. But
I do it in English. I don't do the German part, but yeah, there is a language barrier.
Yeah,
a tiny bit.
You speak German?
I do not. No.
No.
I do, but even like that time savings massive, because then again, organizational stuff is not my strong point anyway. I hate it just generally because it makes me miserable. But at the same time, it also is a huge time suck. So that time that I would have spent on that stuff, I can win 2 new clients and spend the time with them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, and that's what that's the beauty, I think, of having a great, executive assistant, executive business partner. You're both working in your strength zones and collectively creating more opportunity, more growth for the business. It's a beautiful thing. A couple last questions here. Andy, we'll start with you. What do you think that leaders often get wrong when they're first partnering with an executive assistant?
They hold back things. They don't hand the keys over. For me, like I like, as Miranda said, I'm a very open person, right? But I knew as well that I needed to hand the keys over, because otherwise I knew it was never going to work. So Like Miranda's free reign over my email, like whatever she needs, I just give. Here you go, whatever you need. Like whatever's going to make my life easier. And I think executives probably want to keep a certain element of control and maybe don't have that element of trust. If you don't have that element of control, or if you don't have that element of trust, sorry, you're still going to be trying to control on all the things and spin all the plates. So your investment is actually not going to work for you because you're not going to allow it to work. So
Yeah.
It's so true. Because I've had that reversed where I was in a position where I didn't feel that trust. And so it cannot be a successful relationship if there's no mutual trust, because if they don't trust you to handle it, which Andy does, he'll just like from the get-go, this is what I need. And I did it. And it just builds on that. And when that's not there, it is very difficult to have a successful EA exec relationship.
Or even for you, I mean, the trusting for sure, but even for an EA to even be able to do their job if they don't have that level of access. So
yeah, it's also sometimes like I think you do need to take a bit of a leap, especially in the beginning. Like if I think back on like giving over all my passwords, everything, my credit card, everything to somebody that I've never met. Like, here's my passport, here's my credit card, here's all my identification, here's my entire digital identification. You now own this as well. That's like, it's not an easy thing to do, especially if you don't know the person, you didn't get to meet this person in person. Like I get it, right? Because I also had the same thing. I was like, I mean, yeah.
It takes a lot of vulnerability.
Not that easy.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that, Andy, you said that, like that leap of faith, just, I'm going to take this next step and trusting Miranda with your life, really. But then you also mentioned how very quickly, even within that first week, you immediately started to see the value. You probably were able to see that you could count on her, trust her. So even though it's given, you have to, if it's given to you, you really need to make sure you grab it and are careful with that trust and step up to that.
Well, yeah, she hasn't flown to Barbados yet on an Irish passport. So like, there's always time for it, but
but not yet. Yeah. That's awesome. Miranda, I just wanted to ask you one thing that you mentioned earlier about the right matches, and that you had mentioned that in previous roles, maybe you hadn't had the right match within an executive. Could you maybe give us a couple of examples of what that looked like and how you knew it just wasn't the right fit?
Yeah, I think one example. So as an EA, you are managing the inbox and all the communications, right, that the executive is doing. One thing I can recall for sure was very early in the beginning, I noticed the way they would communicate to like a client would be different than the way they communicated with me. And that, like with Andy, what you see and hear is what you get. And that's true with everybody that he speaks with. So it's very authentic. And that authenticity, you can kind of tell right away whether you're meeting someone in person or working with them virtually like this. So, that's one thing that I kind of knew, because I value that authenticity very much. Like in my working life, I want there to be that like sincere, kind of open, communicative relationship. If I don't have that in my working life, like people have different comfort levels, right? When it comes to like work is work and this is my personal life. For me, I want things to be well-rounded and authentic. And that's just a key word that I live by in all of my life. And I didn't sense that. And so that was kind of a red flag for myself personally. Other EAs, like it really does depend on the EA and their comfort level, I would say. But for myself, I wanted a very real relationship, like somebody that I could in my personal life be friends with if I wasn't working for them. And that's, I think for EAs, it's important to not settle because I was in that mindset, like, okay, what could I do? What could I change? How can I be doing this differently? To an extent, I think that's really important to have a successful working relationship, but only to an extent. Like, you don't want to be changing yourself entirely to fit the exact, like, it has to be a good match, right?
Right. Because then you would have been out of alignment with your own values,
Right.
if you had done, right? Because you would no longer have been that authentic person.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say is just how important alignment of values is in general in these partnerships. And from what I know so far of Andy, seems like a very authentic individual.
Yeah.
So there's certainly that alignment of values, which is really important.
Yeah. And I noticed that with the people that he's bringing onto his team too. I've never been able to meet them, but when I communicate with them, it's kind of a web, right? Like when you meet a best friend or like a partner of a best friend, you're like immediately connect with them because you have that mutual person in between. And you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've known you. That's kind of the sense you get. And you can just tell that the people Andy works with that he's personally picked out, it's just kind of like on the same wavelength. And that's really, really nice to have.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just such a great testament to upholding values and culture, and then making sure the people that you bring into your world and organization and partner with are also of the same culture and value and mindset.
Right. Yeah.
It's very cool. So what are you both working on next? What's next for you?
Well, for myself, so Andy would ask me this question from time to time. Be like, Miranda, what do you want to do? Like, what are you up to next? And so he inspired me one day when I was like rambling on about what I'm good at, what I like doing. And he was like, project management, like that's what you would do. And so I was like, huh. So that's kind of what I've been looking into recently, is being certified, in project management and looking at different courses online. Right now, I don't have the time in my personal life with 3 little kids to go back to school at the moment, but I have been researching that. And so I think that might be my next step, as well as just supporting Andy. He said, he can only scale his business to an extent because it's his time, but to be able to support him in a bigger role would be really interesting. To travel to Vienna one day and meet the guys that he works with would also be awesome one day.
I love that so much. It's very cool.
Yeah. So I think as well, like I need somebody anyway on the team. So it's funny because just as we've been having this conversation, my mind is always thinking, okay, what's happening next? And I've just been thinking like, I need somebody that's going to be project manager for basically all the projects that we're working on anyway. So I was like, oh, maybe Miranda could do that at some point. And I just thought about that like 5 minutes ago, by the way, while we were talking about something else. So yeah, I think like I'm going to make sure by all means that Miranda stays on the team regardless. So like if Miranda decides I want to be a project manager, then we'll figure out a way for her to be a project manager at andyculligan.com. That's the most important thing. Yeah, like Miranda put it that way, is I think from my perspective with the business right now, I'm trying to really, because I've grown the team from me to others, so there's other people on the team now, I need to make it a real business. It's not it is a real business, but it's not. As I said to you from the beginning, it was like I was the most shocked out of everybody that this thing was working out. Like I was like, oh, I have a business now, look at this. And that happened very quickly, right? And I need to now make it into something that it is professional, but it needs to be more professional. It needs to be better organized. I'm not the guy for organizing it. So there you go, Miranda, might be an opportunity there. But so I'm doing things like now I'm bringing the other guys that are on the team. They're both based close enough by, like they're not based in Vienna, but not far. That's the beauty of being in Europe, that people can travel very easily. Yeah. Like they're hours away, like not very far. I'm going to bring them over to Vienna in the next couple of weeks, make sure we do a proper photo shoot, make sure that the website is updated with everybody on it. We're going to be sitting down and really mapping out the future of andyculligan.com and what that will look like. Like what's our mission, what's our vision. I know what that is already. And from my side, like is to like from my side, it's removing this consultancy thing and being like undeniable. I wanted to make sure that like whatever we do it undeniably, and people can never point the finger and say it's because you didn't work hard enough or because you didn't do X, Y, Z. So that's what That's what I always make sure that we're doing on all projects. But we need to like translate that into how we present ourselves to the world. And that's the next thing for me for the business, is to really make it into that. And there's so many other things going on at the minute. Like it's the stuff that's closer to home is always the stuff that struggles, because we're putting the effort into our clients, right? So, but yeah,
that's right. That is very, very exciting. I'm excited to see the growth and see the website revamp, and to keep watching what you both are doing, because it's very, very cool. And I love seeing the dynamic between both of you. It's very awesome for me to see that, to see another, partnership really have that great vibe. And thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Sure.